So in this video, we are going to study about free body diagram. So a free body diagram is a sketch of an object of interest that has all the surrounding objects removed and all of the forces acting on the body is shown. So if we are going to take a look here on the picture on the right side, may ari kita diri sang lalaki nga nagabike going up sa hill, for example. Now, if we're going to take a look here on the different arrows, these arrows represents the different forces acting on the body. So this is our force diagram, and here we have our free body diagram. So based on the definition, gin-remove kuno ang object and then ang forces gin-show. So if you're going to take a look here on the free body diagram, so, wala ka diri may makita nga object. However, makita mo diri tanan nga mga forces nga naga-act sa isa ka body or sa isa ka object. So, we have here the applied force, the normal force, the force of gravity, the friction force, and so on. So, there are still other nga mga forces later on that we are going to deal with as we study free body diagram. And by the way, free body diagram is an important step in problem solving in mechanics because of course it will allow you to visualize all the forces acting on a single body. So meaning, mas mahapos sa imo mag-understand or mag-look for what is missing if you know how to visualize, if you know how to analyze um, the forces using the free body diagram. And by the way, speaking of forces, what are the other forces aside from this nga nakita natin sa picture ang aton man nga deal with as we study free body diagram? So these are the following types of forces. So we have the contact forces and the non-contact forces. So in the free body diagram, mostly we are going to deal with the contact forces. And of course, we will also deal with the gravitational force. Now let us get to know what are these forces. To start with, let us have the applied force. So applied force is a force exerted on an object due to muscles. Of course, if ikaw ang nagtiklod, nag-exert ka dira sa force. So you are applying force, you are exerting force, and that's applied force. Next is we have the normal force. So for the normal force, it has a contact interaction between the surfaces. Now, for example, we have here the floor and let's say this is the box. So, the box is at rest sa may floor. Now, paano mo na siya mabalaan kung diin si normal force? So, if this is the floor, your normal force should be perpendicular to the surface. Okay, so perpendicular to the surface. Now, what if, for example, we are going to consider the wall as our surface? And then we have here the mirror, let's say. So if this is the surface, the normal force should be right here. And it is represented by the variable F sub n. Okay, so RD siya. This is your normal force. So that's it. Next, we have the frictional force. So for the frictional force, it has a contact interaction with the surface as it moves. So we have the sliding friction, the static, and the rolling friction. Of course, sliding friction nag-occur na siya if the object is placed on an inclined plane. So, amo na siya very um, evident na si sliding force. Next, we have the static force. So, static force is present usually if the object, of course, is not moving. And for the rolling force, we have that force present if the object is circular. So, meaning if naga-ligid or naga-roll ang object, ara gina si rolling force. So, always remember nga naka-contact ni siya permi with the surface, si frictional force. And this frictional force serve as the opposing force to the applied force when in contact to a surface. Next, let's move on to the tension force. So, tension force is usually applied to a rope, string, or cable. So, or mga chains, pwede man. So, this is for the tension force. So the forces nga gina-exert sa mga strings, rope, or cables, it's called the tension force. Next, we have the air resistance. For the air resistance, it is the opposing force naman if the object is through the gas or it is in the air. Again, it is the opposing force if the object or the body is through the gas or it's in the air. So, kagina, the opposing force sa surface is the friction force. If sa air naman niya, it is the air resistance force. So, as this guy is going towards the Earth's surface, so the opposing force there is the air resistance. And then we have the spring force. Spring force, of course, is present on a spring. So, anything na pwede mo siya ma-stretch or ma-compress, present na si spring force. So, it comes from a displacement of molecules. And next, we have the gravitational force. So, gravitational force is, of course, the force that surrounds us, and it is what decides how much we weigh. So, we have here the force of gravity. So, for the equation, we have F sub g is equal to mg, and weight is equal to mg. So, always remember that mass is not the same sa kay weight. Okay? So when we talk about weight, it is affected by the gravitational acceleration. So whatever the mass of the body or of the object, it will be multiplied to the gravitational acceleration. And their product will be the force of gravity. So if you were able to get the force of gravity exerted by the object, therefore what you're also looking for is the weight of that object. So therefore, we can say that F sub g, or the force of gravity, is equal to the weight of the body. So those are the different types of forces that we are going to study and we're going to deal with as we have the free body diagram. So let us go here to the sample problems. Let us draw a free body diagram to represent the forces acted on an object. So for example, we have a book which is at rest on a table. So how are we going to write our free body diagram here? Now for example, we have here the two arrows. So mabutang kita diri sang pintok sa center kay dirita ni siya i-connect ang aton nga arrows. Just like that. So this is how we are going to draw a free body diagram. So assuming that this is the table, that's a table, ha? Okay, and we have here the book. So we have here the F sub g, which is the force of gravity, and that is going downward. And then we have here the normal force, which is the F sub n. So the normal force is directed upward because the book is at rest on the table and the table is um, naka-horizontal lang aton nga table. So it should be that the normal force and the surface is perpendicular with each other. Okay, so that's it. Always remember that the value of the gravitational force is always equal to the normal force if their arrangement is like this. Naga vertical si F sub n ay naga horizontal ang surface. If amo ni siya ang ilang nga plastada, again, F sub g is equal to F sub n. Pero, for example, this is your F sub g right here, and F sub n mo is right here. Then therefore, they are not equal. Again and again, ma-equal na sila if the arrangement is like this. So if the surface is horizontal and the F sub n is vertical. I hope that it's clear. By the way, this is our free body diagram for our first example. Ayan. Okay. Now let's move on to our second example. An egg is free falling from a nest in a tree. So let's say this is the egg. Let me put a dot there. That is where we are going to connect our arrows. So we have here the air resistance. And then we have here the weight or the gravitational force. Okay. So what if in the problem it is stated that you are going to neglect the air resistance? If you're going to neglect the air resistance, so this is what will happen. This is the egg, and then just simply put there the F sub g because you're going to ignore the air resistance. Next, we have a lady pulling a trolley bag. So how are we going to make our free body diagram here? So let's say this is the bag, and of course this is the floor. So if you're going to take a look here, we have the normal force, tension force, gravitational force, and the friction force. Okay, so here we have our F sub n, and then we have here the F sub g, we have the F sub f, and then at a certain angle, we have the F sub t. Okay, so this is how the free body diagram in this example would look like. Okay, now let's move on to this problem. Let's say we don't have those pictures. All we have to do is to just simply understand and analyze the problem. So a leftward force is applied to a book in order to move across a desk at a constant velocity. So paano ta na siya i-drawing ang aton nga free body diagram. Now we have here, let's say, our surface. Let's say this is the desk. And we have here the book. we are going to apply a leftward force. So this is going to the left. By the way, we put a dot here because this is where the center of gravity is located. So dira na siya tanan gina connect. So applied force going to the left. Okay. And of course, this book has a weight. Therefore, we're going to put there F sub G. And do not forget the normal force. And of course, as you move the book on the left side, there will be an opposing force on the surface, and that is the friction force. And this is how the free body diagram in this problem will look like. Okay, so for the next problem, a pot was pulled using a rope horizontally directed to the east. So a pot daw. So let's say this is the pot, this is the surface. So it was pulled using a rope directed to the east. So let's say this is directed to the east. We have here the F sub t. Miss, I have a question. Why am I not going to use F sub A nga F sub t? Because, di ba, this is a rope. So if you're going to deal with the forces on ropes, it is your tension force ang ginaistoryahan. Okay? And then we have the opposing force. We have the friction force. Okay, and then we have the FG. Always do not forget the FG. And we have the F sub n. Okay, so that's it. So that's all for our drawing of free body diagram. Thank you.